When someone is under 1 million and they're working with you, why are they coming to you?
Okay, because they're still trying to figure things out,
Mm-hmm.
and I have answers for them.
Mm. You have answers for them. You love to help people. You love to educate and help them figure it out. Tell me about a moment
Yeah.
in time. Tell me about a moment in time someone came to you, whether it was Aisha or someone else. They came to you running a decent business. Let's just say they were running hypothetically a $500,000 business, which means they're making
Mm-hmm.
decent money. They have people on their team, but they know the numbers aren't right. I want you to tell me the day that someone came to you, maybe for a consultation, and what
Mm-hmm.
happened in that meeting.
Yeah. So I can think of right. That would be point five design,
Okay.
who they're a graphic design marketing firm.
Mm-hmm.
And she came to us and was like, I've been maintaining the books and they're in pretty decent condition,
Mm-hmm.
but things are starting to get a little bit more complicated because there's a couple of partners, and the partners are taking guaranteed, because it's a partnership, they're taking guaranteed payments, and then they have health insurance, they have, pensions that they're contributing to, they have other staff members. So she wasn't, it was getting a little convoluted for her, or a lot of
Mm-hmm.
convoluted. So she was like, I'm ready to hand this over to, professionals that know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So we were like, okay, we got you. So
But
so
why
they
why why was it the right time? So walk me through. You mentioned the partners and there's team members and everybody's, there's different kind of compensation, especially when they're paying to their retirement funds. But how did this graphic design firm know, okay, it's the right time to go see an accounting firm?
uh, other than because she didn't know what she was doing,
Yeah.
people they don't know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
They get to the point where they realize I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And it starts to fall behind.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time we get clients, especially if they got, good businesses, good sound businesses, making money, and they have a team. Yes, their pain point is typically either one of the owners has been doing it themselves and they don't have
Mm-hmm.
a degree in accounting, so they really don't know what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
and it has fallen behind.
Mm.
And
Okay.
it's fallen behind because they're procrastinating because they know that they don't know what they're doing.
Was there ever a moment where you got a client and they were falling behind, they didn't know what they were doing, but when you started working with them, you realized, oh my gosh, this is what I was meant to do. Was there ever a client like that?
Yeah, with all of our clients, we feel that.
But I
We're
want you to
like,
tell me, but I want you to tell me the moment that that happened. Is there ever a moment? Why not?
oh, let's see. No, because it's what I can't think of moments because it's what we do. Every time we take over
Yeah.
someone's books, they end up looking beautiful. Like we have a term that we have to still trademark. It's pretty financials.
Okay.
All of our clients have pretty financials after they start working with us. It's trash when they give it to us. But
Hmm.
I cannot think, I don't have moments where I'm saying, oh yeah, this is what I meant to do, because when I see the monthly reports that's created by my team and they look amazing,
Hmm.
I think we go, but I can't think of a time, a moment in time where I
So why bother doing this work? Why bother getting out of bed and doing this work? The work that you're doing today, why bother?
because I know that we're making a difference and it gives me purpose. I gotta be helpful.
You know you're making a difference, but the only way for you to know you're making a difference is to go through the experience, right? What I want you to do is tell me more about the experience. So, for example, um, I remember showing a document. So I do documentary series. I do video production, right? And I remember I worked with a client for 6 months. Normally, it's a 6-month contract, And I worked with her, and this specific client, she was running a jewelry business. And the jewelry business, very big business, $100 million business through direct sales. So they have consultants that sells their products. It's kind of like a Mary Kay,
Okay,
right?
type, uh-huh.
And they um they were working with a fulfillment center that actually sent out all the jewelry. But this fulfillment center, she got a call one day that the fulfillment center was going out of business, and she had 3 days to come to this fulfillment center and pull out $5 million worth of jewelry.
Right.
And if she did not do that, she would lose her entire business. She did it. She was able to do it. She overcame it. But we filmed that in the documentary series. And then as she was watching this documentary series back over, she sits back, she has tears in her eyes, and she says, I needed to see that again. Like some of the things that she said, there's some of the things that she did, she needed to see that again to remember what she went through.
Right.
That would not have happened had I not captured it, but two, had I not known how to capture that story in order to she lived it, but now she's reliving it in the moment. That is what helps me to see, like, okay, you're doing the work that you were called to do. Or even in moments like this where I'm talking to you and you was like, that's something you've never thought about before, is that you want to help people feel good about what they're doing. You want, like, that's what helps me to see that there's this very specific moment in time. I'm talking to Tuesday, I'm asking her questions, and she's like, well, to be honest with you, I just really want people to feel good about what they're doing. Right. That's the moment I'm looking for in your every day. Yes, I get that you work with a lot of clients, and I get that it happens all the time, but I want to go into that very specific moment when that's happened.
Well, here's the issue with that. I have an awful memory. No, seriously. Like
Okay.
I rely on friends and family
Okay.
to recall stuff that happened in my
Okay.
life.
Okay.
Like I literally have no recollection of it. So for me to reflect on, a moment, it's a challenge because I
Who are
don't.
okay, let's think of, even if you have poor memory, let's think of the last 2 weeks. Are there any
Mhm.
highlights from the last 2 weeks? Any moments, any small, even if they're small, things that
Being
are
on the beach. So the last 2 weeks I was on
okay, so
vacation.
maybe
So
you were on
let's go
vacation.
back.
Well, no, okay, so let's stick with that. You were on vacation. I saw photos of you on the boat. You like to go boating, right? Let's actually stick with that. How do you relate boating, being the captain, right? How do you relate that to accounting? Because, and here's how I want you to think about it. I've never driven a boat, don't know how to drive a boat, but I would imagine even when the waters are choppy, there's a certain technique that you have to use in order to
Yeah.
manage the boat, right?
Go into the wave 45 degrees or 45 degrees. So you're not going like this, right?
Okay. So if you can't remember moments, bring me into that moment in time, a moment, maybe the last 2 weeks when you were on the boat, that relates to accounting. Meaning, what I want you to do is help paint a picture for people who, the same way you would do it as you're educating them, help paint a picture for me of how, when you're on a boat, it can be the same as like experience as being as when you need to get your books right. You need to get your numbers right. You need to get the balance sheet right. Help me understand what that looks like.
Mm. You're asking me to do things that I told you, like,
We working on it though. We're
I
working
don't
on
think in these terms.
it. Okay.
So if I were to use metaphorically, is it an analogy or a metaphor? It's one of those.
One of those, yeah.
Um, so before you actually start cruising,
hmm
there's things that you need to check,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
you need to know when's high tide, when's low tide, what the wind speed is, if this, what else is in the forecast in terms of
hmm
rain or anything like that. So before you even set out, you want to have certain insights.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you're on the water, you have to pay particular attention to the depth, right? To make sure you don't do what's called run aground, where the water's really shallow and now your engine has gotten stuck in the mud.
Hold that thought. Hold that thought. So
Mhm.
you said check the depth to make sure your engine doesn't what, run in the ground?
Run aground.
Run aground, okay.
HGROUND.
How does that
And
relate to accounting? At what point do they need to make sure they don't run aground?
the whole way through.
Okay.
So when you're driving the boat, you're navigating. And like navigating is literally a thing. And the reason and how I started to really understand it, like outside of just having fun and knowing how to drive a boat, is when my son comes on the boat. He's 20.
Okay.
And he got his certification to drive a boat. But of course, he's 20. So he's going to be a lot more reckless and not pay attention to stuff, right? So he's just driving and he wants to go 18, 20 miles, straight ahead and go really fast. And I said, and it got to a point where the water got shallow. I was like, Ron, you have to pay attention. And he was like, but it's low tide. I said, right. So if you know it's low tide, you have to do some navigation, meaning you have to pay attention you have to pay the entire time. You can't just start out knowing it's low tide and then go and do 20 miles an hour and be reckless. So the process of driving a boat is literally navigating, paying attention, because underneath the water, right? There's valleys, there's peaks and valleys. So the whole time you're paying attention to what's going on under the water. And that's what is going to create the smooth ride for you. So it's a part that you don't see that potentially impacts your business, I guess, and that's the same thing, impacts your business. It's the part you don't see under the water. If you're not navigating properly, that will impact your ability to ride on the water.
So we just got your first story that'll go out in a newsletter very soon. Because what you did was you told me about the day, the very specific moment, your son had just gotten his license, decided you two would go out on the water, but he decided to be reckless, not paying attention to what's going on under the water.
Correct.
But what you did is had to navigate him back to understanding how to pay attention and how to navigate the boat, right? In the same way that you would do it for your clients. When your clients are coming in, they've been a little reckless. They don't know what they're doing. They're just,
not paying attention to a
not
lot
paying
of things.
attention. But what you're doing when you sit with them or, virtual, whatever it is you're navigating them back to understanding this is what it needs to look like. This is what to pay attention to. This is why you need to pay attention to it. So that's what I'm looking for when I say tell me stories, because you may not have the greatest memory as far as like maybe it's happening with clients, but how do you relate your own life? Because I remember you did say that in your questionnaire that you don't remember what it was like growing up. Like you rely on other people, but there are moments in your life that happen now that relate to your accounting business that will help you better understand your accounting business or help other people understand. Because numbers are boring to most people. You love it. You've been doing it for years. What I'm looking to do is to make it easier for people to understand. How do we make meaning of the numbers for people, right? This is one of the ways that we just did that is through, again, that it's only because I saw your pictures on Instagram before our session. But what I'm looking to do is even when you post that picture, let's say, okay, so let's think about the newsletter for a second. Let's take that same picture you have on Instagram, or because it's a bunch of pictures, but let's just say one of them, and you post that on your newsletter, but then you also tell this story. Like, yes, people know you love boating. I love boating. I go
Yes.
out I think you said you go out every Tuesday. Is that right? Or
Right.
right.
Uh-huh.
You go out every Tuesday. You love boating. But I can remember a time when I took my son out for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And he had just got his license. He was excited. He had seen me boating all the time. Now he's got his license. He can boat now. Um, but he's out on the water and he's being reckless, right? And then
Not
you
paying
tell that
attention.
he's not paying attention. You tell that whole story, and then when you get to wrap up the story, you're like, accounting is the same way. You got to pay attention to what's going on, which pay attention to
What's going on?
what you don't see
Mhm.
under the water, right?
Water. Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, it may look good, day to day, but when you look under the water, when you look under the surface, when you really dig into the numbers, that's what you have to pay attention to, right?
Right.
What else do you enjoy doing, or spending your time doing? Or actually, before we even leave the boating, tell me another incident that happened on the boat. Maybe recently or last couple months. What's happened on the boat? Maybe another crazy story. Maybe like I can think of for me myself. I went jet skiing August 16th. It was for a friend's birthday, and um, there were 3 jet skis out there, but one of them ran out of gas. So we had to tow the jet ski back. And what we didn't know is you can't tow, it's not safe to tow 2 people sitting on a jet ski. Right. And so tell me a story of like a time where maybe something else happened, another crazy moment happened, and let's try to figure out how does that relate to accounting.
Okay. Um, haven't really had any crazy things happening, but if I reflect on my training, so let's think about my training. So, um, because I want to become really skilled at this, I took on the water training. I took 2 or 3 sessions. And my first trainer, and there's always a captain, someone really experienced in boating, who takes you out on the water. It's a 3-hour session. And I was because I had spent the prior summer driving my friend's boat. I was very comfortable. So all of the maneuvers and everything he taught me was absolutely fine. I had no problem doing it. And I'm good. The one thing that's always a challenge for new boaters is docking,
Mm,
right? To be able to pull into a dock and to park the boat essentially. Everyone has an issue with this, but especially you're going to have issues in the beginning when you're not experienced with doing it. So I did not do that. My friend always parked his boat last summer, even if I were driving. So now the trainer, he teaches me how to pull into a slip, right? And he
hmm
has to do it over and over and over again. So we're in this space where there's no other boats, it's just slips. So he says, okay, pull in. And he's teaching me how to maneuver. Okay, turn to your left. Now go into reverse, go to forward, go into neutral. And he's showing me all the mechanics to pulling and parking. He has me do it over and over and over again until he's satisfied. He says, okay, I feel like, you passed everything in your training and I feel like you're good to go, sign off. So let's head back now. So we head back to our marina, and now it's time for me to dock. But there are other boats there now. I just practiced where there were no other boats. So now I panic because I don't want to drive into one of the other boats. So I kept having issues, and I was like, "Bro, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it." And more than I think I probably tried once or not at all. I don't even remember at that point because I was petrified about slamming into and destroying somebody's boats. So he was like, "You could do it," and I was like, "No, I can't do it." So then it got to the point where I didn't end up doing it. He parked the boat. Oh, I forgot the most important part to this story. He what prior to that happening, he was yelling at me. He started yelling. He lost his patience because in his training me the maneuvers, there's a delay. If I have to tell you something and then you do it, at least 2 seconds has gone by. And when you're parking a boat, you're paying attention to the wind and the drift of the water. That's what you're really managing. Like if you got to figure out which the direction of the wind, what side am I trying to park on? So how do I have to pull in? What angle? And that's going to determine if you go forward or if you stay in neutral or go reverse. So he's telling me which way to turn and then the maneuvers, and my response is delayed. So he got frustrated. He was like, "You're not going to be able to do this if I have to tell you." So he got a little frustrated. We laugh about it, like he wasn't being mean. He was just like really like, I really need you to get this. So how this relates to our work, let's see. I think
Well, first, have you learned how to park a boat now?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that happened. So then he asked me, he said, "Do you want me to sign off? Because I know I saw you do it when there was no vote." He said, "I can sign off on everything. But how do you feel about docking?" And I said, "You know what? I want to do another training." So he signed off on everything except I went out and I did another training to practice more docking. So now I go out on the boat all the time, and I know how to maneuver to get in the slip. So
Is there ever a time where you ask your clients to do something and they don't do it?
Yes, and that's what I was about to relate to, that a lot of times there's frustrations when when we tell a client or they have to do something and it's delayed. That makes it hard for us to do what we need to do. That makes it hard to to proceed or park if we can't close the books if you still got.
What happens when it's delayed? When you can't close the books, what happened? What goes wrong?
Well, let's see. I don't know. It's not the end of the world. That's why people get away with having prolonged trash books, until they go out of business.
Yeah.
So there's no immediate, bottom falling out, but they're guaranteed. When you don't have things in place, you're guaranteed to pay more taxes, guaranteed to pay more in taxes than you would had you been doing things right, the whole time, the whole way through. And then delays causes penalties and interest. Like we have a client right now who I've been trying to get her to engage us with bookkeeping for years, and she always insists that she can do it herself. Meanwhile, her tax returns are unfiled because we're always waiting for her to finish the bookkeeping. And now she owes an enormous amount of interest and penalty.
What's an enormous amount?
Upwards of $5,000. It's probably somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000.
And then what could she have owed if she had worked with you?
Nothing. Nothing. Well, whatever the ordinary income tax would be on the profit of that particular business at the time.
So pause there for a second, because what I'm seeing as you're telling me this, when you were learning how to dock a boat, you were afraid, you were scared to do it. Yeah. At first you rehearsed and you did it on your own, where he was telling you what to do and you did it on your own. Now there's other boats in the area. There's other people around and you're afraid.
Yeah.
So you don't get to do it the first time. But now, so how I relate that to the client that you're talking about, she could have owed 10,000 or she could have owed nothing.
Right.
Had she just not been afraid to engage you, not been afraid to allow you to do the work that you are called to do.
Yeah. For
she
sure.
Could owe nothing. And that $10,000 could go towards something else. It could go towards college for her kids. It could go towards something, buying a new car for her child in high school, whatever it is. So that, again, this is So one, you're wrong that you're not a storyteller because you just told me 2 stories, right? And you brought me into the moments where you're like, he's frustrated with you, right? He starts yelling it. That's a moment. I'm seeing the moment where I can imagine what it's like to dock the boat. Now, I was on a boat the day I told you I went to jet skiing this month or last month
Right,
now. I was on a boat, never even paying attention to him docking the boat because we had docked the boat at one point to go eat. We docked it at a restaurant.
right. That's what we do. We dock at a restaurant and get off and eat. Right,
Never paying attention to there's some specific technique. I thought it looked, I mean, of course, the guy made it look easy because he's probably done it 100 times, but
right.
there's a technique to it. And if
It's-
you don't follow the technique or you don't follow the instructions that you've been taught, you won't dock the boat. You won't save money, right?
Right.
All right, so that's 2 already. Now remember, you're gonna get their audio recording. So I think you mentioned you have a writer that does your newsletters.
Mhm.
He or she is gonna get this recording. They have 2 stories already now. Now you have 2
Right.
weeks worth of content. If you're doing it every week, you have 2 weeks worth of content where you're sharing stories on helping people understand why it's important to have an accounting firm or why to continue
Yes.
engaging accounting firm. Or even better, there's 2 things that's gonna happen. One, they're gonna get more interested in your boating stories, right?
Right.
But 2, those stories are what they can tell to their friends and families to refer
Mhm.
you, to make it easier to refer you, right?
Mm.
What else is it
Mhm.
that you like to do outside of boating? I know boating is a
Yeah.
big piece, but what else is there that you do?